tells us, because it says it now, but we're just going to wait just a little bit, Bloom. A tiny bit.
Wait just a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. And then which game did we finish with yesterday? We finished on an awful one, right? Philly and Washington?
Yes, NFC least.
Yeah, okay. So here we go. It is time for part 2 of the Week 15 preview here on the Audible. That's right, the footballguys.com podcast. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom jumping in with Seattle and Carolina. And the Seattle side of thing, it's Rashad Penny. Oh, sorry, Rashad. He's down. Now it's all back to Chris Carson. Okay, cool. They say Josh Gordon will do more. I'm still waiting for Week 16 against Arizona, Bloom. But you got to make it there. So are you really trusting Josh Gordon? DK Metcalf. The Tyler Lockett trust issues continue for fantasy GMs. Would they be rewarded this week or no? And what's that mean for Russell Wilson? Getting a lot of Russell Wilson or Ryan Tannehill questions this week, Bloom. So let's have you weigh in here, brother.
Yeah, I think that you take Tannehill over Wilson. We've got long enough trailing data for both of those guys. And again, I'll refer back to Tyler Lockett. Not trying to throw his coaches under the bus, just saying we weren't going for explosive plays. We were trying to control the ball. I think against this Carolina defense, they're going to be able to control the ball. 30 carries for 170 yards for Chris Carson. Do you put together a DFS lineup without Chris Carson this week? I don't think so. Carolina looks like they don't really want to tackle a hard charging running back like Chris Carson. So that does make I think with Russell Wilson, we're expecting 20 attempts, maybe 2 or 3 of those are for touchdowns, even long touchdowns. I like the matchup of Tyler Lockett getting healthier against the secondary. However, you're walking the tightrope. I mean, you could easily get. It's not even saying you can easily get what you got the last 4 weeks. It's almost like, why do you think you're not going to get what you got the last 4 weeks? So even some of these high ceiling, low floor plays like Terry McLaurin this week, you're weighing against Tyler Lockett. And I suppose if you want to play Lockett, Pete Carroll did say he's 100% now. So maybe that's an admission. He hasn't been 100%, but he wasn't exactly that consistent before. And the game plan's working against you. DK Metcalf looks like he's a better play, at least in PPR leagues, or a safer play. And as always, we remind you to look at your opponent's lineup, see if you need ceiling or floor this week. Metcalf is the floor play. And Lockett the ceiling play. And probably you're going to play Jacob Hollister in this one as a tight end if he's been your best tight end, say, over the last month. The interesting thing here is Seattle, it's going to get to the Byzantine NFL tiebreakers, but I believe if Seattle wins out, which would include a win over San Francisco, they can still have not just the division, I think they can still have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which is kind of a big deal considering Seattle. So they need to win this game. And Carolina looks like a team that was totally deflated after Ron Rivera was let go. So probably won't be that difficult for them to get the win they need.
Imagine the playoffs going through Baltimore in the AFC and Seattle in the NFC. We're going to have Seattle-Baltimore Super Bowl then. Let's talk Carolina and Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore. Cool. Looks like Ian Thomas again. Maybe we'll check in on Greg Olson's health status. Although, might as well just go with Ian Thomas. He's the future, and he looks really good. Looks like a young Greg Olson, honestly. And then, Curtis Samuel, what the heck, flex levels. No one should be trusting Kyle Allen. Sounds about right for Carolina.
Yeah, Allen's not going to play well, but it is Seattle's defense, so maybe the numbers will come. I mean, that's how it's been. He hasn't been playing well, but the numbers have been there. It's all coming back to, of course, Christian McCaffrey. Maybe if he gets a touchdown or two, he could help you win your week. He's going to help you regardless, but the touchdowns haven't come the last few weeks. And you have to keep DJ Moore in. He's the high floor play. Curtis Samuel fits into that same high ceiling, very low floor play, and the ceiling might not be as high. Every week we chronicle how he just needs a different quarterback. And then you have the tight end. Play the Carolina tight end. However, will it be Greg Olson or will it be one Ian Thomas? We might have to wait until game time to find this out. It is a home game, so we're not going to have any, Greg Olson traveled or didn't travel. But again, with this team, see, every week when we break down Carolina, I just think, especially now with the Ron Rivera firing, decisions. How much of these coaches, how much of the staff even comes back next year? I mean, it's David Tepper. I'm guessing David Tepper is going to bring someone in that's going to get the freedom I mean, Marty Herney's going to stay on some sort of advisory capacity, something like that. But you bring someone into this franchise right now, and you give them complete freedom, kind of like what Sean McDermott got, speaking of Carolina, in Buffalo. That kind of imperial power. Who knows what this team is going to look like? Who knows what the blueprint is? They did just re-sign Shaq Thompson to a long contract, but there's a lot of uncertainty going forward.
Tons of uncertainty in Jacksonville as well. Almost Jacksonville at Oakland. Is this the last home game in Oakland, Bloom?
It is. It is.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll pour out a 40 for our Oakland brethren who cheer for the Raiders, including our man Jason, the Greeley DFS degenerate pot stoner up there. So I know he's cheering on the Raiders, but let's talk about Jacksonville first. Should be a ton of Leonard Fournette. And then we've got the wide receiver issues to deal with, including injuries, and DJ Chark should give it a go, but should fantasy GMs give it a go with their Jaguars players not named Leonard Fournette?
This is like the saddest game of the year. This might be the saddest game we've ever broken down, Cecil.
True.
Seriously. I mean, even if you just said it's the last home game in Oakland, that's sad. That's really sad. I mean, this is that last moment, the last goodbye of a great NFL franchise. I mean, Cecil, if you just say Oakland Raiders and you close your eyes, all the things that flash through your brain, you can't tell the story of the NFL without the Oakland Raiders.
The autumn wind is a Raider.
And this is the last home game. But what makes this even sadder is Jacksonville is having an historic collapse. Their last 5 games, they've been basically as bad as any team in NFL history. And Oakland, over their last 3 games, have basically been as bad as any team in NFL history. So this is truly testing that theory of, well, when bad football plays bad football, it can be an offensive shootout. That's what Al Davis would want, right? Or it could just be bad football. I don't know. So we have 2 situations here where the team is somehow, or the reports are somehow keeping hope alive that these standout players, right? DJ Chark and Josh Jacobs are going to play, but I'm not so sure. D.D. Westbrook is probably the best play from Jacksonville. And I try not to get too hung up on the matchups. I mean, if a Jacksonville player goes off, then we say, well, it's because Oakland's so bad, and vice versa. So D.D. Westbrook, you compare and contrast him with these upside plays we keep talking about, like Lockett and McLaurin, etc. He's a high floor play. Conley has almost no momentum coming into this game, even if he gets more opportunity. And I don't expect Chark to play, even they said he's going to travel. Nico Learley, if you're throwing a Hail Mary at tight end. And of course, Leonard Fournette. And, star-crossed Leonard Fournette finally gets everything together in his house, and the house around him, the block, is on fire, So that's just where Leonard Fournette is at. That's where the Jags are at. This is another team at a massive crossroads. I don't think this team, these coaches, I think that there's a massive failure of leadership at the top. I don't think they want to play for Tom Coughlin. I have no idea. This could be like Bengals South, where at this point they might just be looking at it as a business and not as a win-loss factory. So I'm sorry, Jags fans. It was nice for a blink there, one play away from the Super Bowl. Now it feels like one development away from them being like the Mexico City Jaguars or the London Jaguars.
Have any of the Cat team won since the Black
Cat?
I
think there's one win, I think.
One?
Yeah, the Black Cat stole their mojo.
The Black Cat is awesome. The Raiders, the black hole is awesome. And a shout out to Raiders fans. This is a gut punch. You know what I mean? When you get a team that's ripped from your community for whatever reason. And yeah, Vegas will be fun and all that. And, Vegas is Vegas. Nothing against it. But it'll just be different, Bloom. It'll be different for fantasy GMs who picked up DeAndre Washington thinking they had something, and now Josh Jacobs is probably going to play. Again, Thursday morning, we're recording this, so full disclosure, we don't yet know, but it seems like Jacobs is trending to play, which makes DeAndre Washington more of a deep flex, or even what the heck flex play, as Jacobs should do his RB2 level thing against Jacksonville. And then Darren Waller, maybe he'll dash a Derek Carr. Really, there's not much to trust in Oakland, and even now the Jacobs situation makes you shaky on trust in that.
Yeah, everything's shaky, right? And see, this is a chance to, it is sad to have a team taken from your community And there's all kinds of layers here we could talk about with public financing of stadiums and how those things go. Also, Oakland's becoming greatly gentrified. If you went to Oakland 20 years ago and you go to Oakland today, some parts of it are totally different. Not the franchise. I'm sorry, not the community that 70s Raiders vibe, or even Marshawn Lynch. Did you see Marshawn Lynch, by the way? They were asking his 4 favorite Seattle Seahawks of all time. Did you see this, Cease? They asked, and this is just classic Marshawn Lynch, getting on Twitter. Name your 4 favorite Seahawks of all time. Marshawn Lynch, Big Walt, Walter, and Mr. Jones. Kind of like that. So, we can't mention Oakland without thinking about
Russell
Marshawn
Wilson
Lynch.
wasn't on the list. Wow.
Jacobs, John Gruden saying just because he had the positive MRI results, don't think that's a guarantee he's going to play. Don't dump DeAndre Washington. Jacksonville and Carolina are having a contest to see who wants to defend the run less in December. So DeAndre Washington was solid for you, even as a total Hail Mary what the heck flex, even if Jacobs is active, because it could be that Jacobs in pain tries to play and just says, I don't think it's going to work today. And DeAndre Washington still has a good game. And you play Darren Waller. That's it. You don't trust Derek Carr or anybody else that Derek Carr is throwing to. It was nice. Cease, rewind a month. We were talking about, hey, maybe Oakland sneaks into the playoffs. They have a manageable schedule. They've played well against teams that we thought are pretty good teams. And then it all fell apart. So Las Vegas Raiders here become Oakland Raiders. We will miss you. You'll always be in our hearts. And you can say Oakland Raiders football. That means something. That'll always mean something special. And for all the Oakland Raiders fans, we feel your pain, and we appreciate, you think of the most spirited crowds, right? Is there even another team that has a whole cast of characters in the crowd? People, and these are regular folks. The Bills are, I think of Pancho Villa, and I think of what the Bills do. But, these are folks that this is truly their passion, and they show their passion in the way they transform. And it's a ritual the same way that the players transform on Sunday. And we'll miss that in Oakland.
Bloom, it's a Thursday night show, but screw it. We got a bunch of horrible games coming up. But anyway, I just looked ahead. You talk about how Oakland has changed. I will talk about how NFL stadiums have changed.
Yeah.
And how it's all corporate now.
Yeah.
I think of the South Stands in Denver, and I think of the old Mile High and South Stands fans, nobody dressing up, but everyone being crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And being rowdy and obnoxious. Now I stand at the South Stands at the last 2 minutes of every game. I stand on the field, and it's fine. It's like, it's let's go, everybody go. Let's go see a football game. And that's cool and all, but you're losing the personality of these stadiums.
Yeah.
You're losing the personality of the fan base. And Oakland, the stupid baseball diamond, whatever, that was awful, playing on dirt in the NFL world that we live in. But just that feel, Vegas is going to be more than fine, but you won't have that feel. There's almost a grime, grit.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. You know what I mean?
Well, it was for the people, I mean,
yeah. This is ours. This is ours. This is our community. This is us.
Yeah. And even the players, I think, it's different than baseball. And basketball, I think, has been embraced in a different way. But I think that the football fandom was a true community unifier, I think, in a way that other sports hadn't. And I think football, because of the way that it's played, almost like you said, gives people permission to get it out, let it out, just like on in a football field, you can do things that you would be arrested for, right? In a football tailgate, you can do things that you would be arrested for and get away with it. So hopefully there's some element that it remains for the people. We're for the people, Cease. And you're right. Football stadiums have changed. Football has changed. But the one thing I will say, to put this on a positive note before we turn the page to another game, is football, professional football, is still one of the last remaining outposts of the pure American dream. No matter where you start, no matter what you go up against, if you work hard enough, if you are driven enough, Cease, we were just talking yesterday about players that are cut 4 or 5 times. How many teams has Raheem Mostert played for already? And if you're good enough, you will get that chance and you can make it happen. So there's a lot of players there still going against the odds and overcoming the odds. And we're here to help you overcome the odds in your fantasy semifinal.
Well, let's talk about the Browns and the Vance Joseph. We're back. Arizona Cardinals defense. And the Brown side of things is interesting because of OBJ, right? It's like a Tyler Lockett thing. Can you trust Odell Beckham Jr.? Jarvis Landry in a PPR's top 10 play, of course, against Arizona. And, well, then you look at the backfield and go, well, of course, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, yes. And then David Njoku becomes very interesting, Bloom, because you're like, he shook off the rust last week. Does this week he do more against a team that can't cover tight ends?
So first you have Baker, and this is a good matchup, but he had a good matchup last week. I think he just hasn't earned our trust at this point. It's an offense that should run through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Those are the plays you trust here. And Jarvis Landry over Beckham. And Beckham, you're looking at the data, and unlike Beckham, with Tyler Lockett, at least you can say he can be getting over whether it's the flu or that leg injury that put him in the hospital. He can get over those things, but we know that Beckham's playing with that hernia. So I'm not saying that Beckham isn't the right call. Beckham can always, in any given week, have a 150-yard multi-touchdown game, but I'm not talking you out of benching him. If you say, I'm playing, Christian Kirk in the same game over Beckham. I'm not saying that's the wrong move. Or Michael Gallup, or Emmanuel Sanders, or Deebo Samuel. Darius Slayton. I'm not saying that's the wrong move. Even Adam Thielen coming back against the Chargers, because we can see what Odell Beckham is for us this year. And Njoku's banged up. He's back on the injury report for something else, I think. So it's just no momentum coming into this one for him. I'm not saying, again, Njoku on one play can get a 60 or 70-yard touchdown against this defense, but I'm not trying to shoehorn him into my lineup. Theme here, Cease, Cleveland's not going anywhere, right? But they have to decide what they're going to do with Kitchens, and it sounds like it's the same as it ever was. There's a split between Dorsey and Haslam about Kitchens, and I get it. There's continuity. There's the idea of letting a program take root for a few years, but I also think you can see who Freddie Kitchens is at this point in his coaching development. And on one hand, you don't want owners meddling, but on the other hand, if it's not working, it's not working. So same, it feels like forever ago, Cease, that people were picking the Browns to win the division. Now we're not even sure what the direction of this franchise is.
People were predicting the Browns to go to the Super Bowl. So here we go. All right, Arizona side. Hey, well, you mentioned Christian Kirk, right?
Yeah.
Let's get through this Cardinals side because it's not
there's not much to it. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I mean, Kyler Murray, I know he doesn't have to face Myles Garrett, but again, you're looking at momentum here. The momentum they have is up the draft board. They want to try to sneak in there and maybe steal Chase Young in some way. Drake has a low ceiling. David Johnson made a play last week. Terrell Edmonds should have broken that up. 41.5-inch vertical. Come on, where was that on that play? So, but David Johnson's showing some more merit to get on the field. Not that you're playing David Johnson. Christian Kirk, you just know that's the security blanket. So, especially in PPR leagues, he's the safe play. Larry Fitzgerald has a much lower ceiling. And it could really be, honestly, the best of both worlds for Arizona, right? You get some things rolling with Cliff and Kyler, and the same players do better on offense, basically. They salvage the offense. The defense, we'll get there. They've got Budda Baker, Chandler Jones, some guys to build around, and they're going to get a high pick. So you have your cake and eat it, and that probably includes losing to the Browns in this one.
Okay, Minnesota and the Chargers. You mentioned Thielen being back, Bloom, and it's a great discussion about where you would have Thielen, because you mentioned OBJ there and comparing him. Thielen, it's not maybe a wrong answer to bench OBJ for Thielen. Well, Thielen's back, and, well, we've seen it before where he's back, and then he plays 7 snaps and has to leave the game. So fantasy GMs are like, okay, give me some digs here. It looks like Dalvin Cook's going to be good to go, and Alexander Madison more of a what-the-heck flex now, and then, Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. and all that. But with the Vikings now, there is not much momentum, or not the kind of momentum you want going on the road to face the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that this is a fascinating game. I mean, in so much that the Chargers, they always seem to be detached from whatever their playoff hopes are anyway. And this is a team that is going to come together, probably look like one of the best 6 teams in the AFC in December, even though they're not going to the playoffs. Derwin James coming back. And this defense has really firmed up with the return of Derwin James. And Minnesota still needs to win. The Rams are hot on their heels. They still have to play the Packers. They have a range of outcomes anywhere from a bye maybe and a division title, at least a home game in the playoffs, to missing the playoffs. And the Chargers thumped the team that they're chasing, the Packers. So lots of angles here. Kirk Cousins, because that Chargers defense is coming on, I'm not so hot on Cousins this week. Got to play Dalvin Cook. We'll always remember the great Dalvin Cook scare of 2019 season. I was,
Right.
Just as you were, play Dalvin Cook. I think Thielen, you play him basically as you normally would because they've been cautious. Because Thielen himself said he's not going to play until he's 100%. And I think you got to play Diggs. I mean, I shouldn't say have to. I mean, he's not an automatic play. But at the same time, we know that his ceiling is that 150-yard game. We've seen it multiple times in this one. And this game does have, and I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here, because this is where, if you want me to talk you into playing Kirk Cousins as one of your many options at quarterback, this could become a shootout. I could see this game turning into a wild and woolly back and forth game with lots of vertical passing, probably not including Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith. I know that Minnesota would like to rely on their defense, like to rely on Dalvin Cook, but I feel like the Chargers are coming in hot in this one, and it really might be the Chargers defense that keeps this from becoming a high-scoring game.
Well, they got Mo because they got AE, Austin Eckler. And, of course, Melvin Gordon doing his thing, although in PPR leagues, you'll favor Eckler over Gordon. You'll favor Phillip Rivers and start 2 QB leagues because, well, Keenan Allen should be top 10 fantasy receiver this week. Mike Williams doing his thing along with Hunter Henry. And as you mentioned, Bloom, that defense coming along. The Chargers, it's too little too late. They usually do this, Bloom, but they do it on time. They were late this year, but they're doing it again. We're in December and the Chargers are surging. Shock.
Yeah, well, and Rivers is surging after looking like Father Time was catching up with him. And I'm not scared of the Minnesota defense. And I love what the Chargers can put out there on offense right now. Another way to think about, especially a quarterback breaking these ties, if you're playing Rivers, you're getting a piece of Eckler, Gordon, Allen, Mike Williams, who's coming on, and Hunter Henry. That all sounds good to me. And you're playing Eckler and you're playing Gordon. No questions asked. You're playing Keenan Allen, no questions asked. You're probably playing Hunter Henry. You could get cute with it. I mean, Hunter Henry versus Tyler Higbee. I mean, the last 2 weeks, Higbee's been the right answer. And, some of these other guys, Hollister, et cetera. But Henry hasn't been doing too much. Probably still playing him, though. And I think you're just trusting this offense. Even Mike Williams in that high ceiling category finally broke through and got a touchdown. I won't be surprised if the Chargers really dominate in this game like they did against the Packers, even though they don't really truly call it a home game. All the Minnesota folks, chance to get out of the cold, go down to Southern California, turn that into a home game. I think this is a game, I would almost call this a pick-em kind of game. And again, a game that has the potential to produce as many points as any game this week.
Well, let's get on to a game that has potential to produce some points. At least Jerry is hoping, and well, so is Jason Garrett. LA Rams traveling to face the Dallas Cowboys. And I guess this Rams take, Bloom, should come down to how you feel about Jared Goff. Because if you feel okay about Jared Goff, like, he's pretty good and he should have a good game against the Cowboys, all right, that'll give you more confidence in your Woods, Cooks. Higbee should be top 10 fantasy tight end anyway. And Todd Gurley's like a running back too, like he is all the time now. That's just where we're at with Todd Gurley, unfortunately. But I think you could paint a different picture if you were more down on Goff, Bloom, and predict disaster traveling to Dallas. Where do you come down on Goff?
So this is one of those situations that we've been watching Goff all year. And I think that we can say this about certain players, certain units or attacks, passing attacks, rushing attacks. When the Rams are facing a weaker defense, everything works. The numbers start to pile up. When the Rams are facing a tough defense, nothing works. So you have these, and I guess this is what happens when you have a quarterback who mainly plays well within structure, This is what happens whenever your offense is built on a lot of structural advantages based on the game plan, based on the play calls. I mean, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are kind of having the season that Goff and McVay had last year, where it's working against most everybody, even the good defenses. But it hasn't been like that for the Rams. So are the Cowboys a good defense right now? No, not at all. That's probably good, honestly, for that Dallas side. That's probably good. That's good for the Ram side. It's good for Todd Gurley. It's good. Robert Woods. Has anybody been better over the last 3 weeks, fantasy wide receivers, than Robert Woods, whatever that personal issue was? I hope it's cleared up because his game is cleared up. You're probably playing Goff. Again, if you don't have one of those quarterbacks that you're automatically playing, I mean, I'm playing Goff over probably guys like Josh Allen, et cetera, this week. Cooper Kupp has a lower ceiling. And this team has gotten more comfortable in 2 tight end sets. Kupp is only out there, I think, in obvious passing situations now. Still enough to make him a wide receiver 3. But there was a point halfway through the year this year that we thought he was about as valuable as any wide receiver. That's Woods who's taken over that spot. And yes, Tyler,
the Steelers broke him.
Yep. Well, there you go. When the Steelers figure out how to shut you down schematically, then that's a problem. And then there's Higbee, and I don't think we're going to see Gerald Everett. So I'm not necessarily projecting Higbee. I mean, 7 for 100 plus. That's about as good as it gets for a tight end. He's done it, in 2 straight weeks now? So maybe the right answer is Higbee, unless it's Kelsey, Ertz, or Kittle. I don't know if we're that strong on Higbee, but I think we are strong on the Rams offense. Everything's probably going to work this week.
On the Cowboys side, they're hoping that it works. It should be as much Zeke as you can handle. That's fine, but we're not seeing that like we want. So Dak throwing it. I like Gallup more than Cooper just because I never really can trust Cooper Bloom. Randall Cobb's like a deep flex or even a what the heck flex play, and really not going to trust Jason Witten ever, even if there's a fire. So I always quote, every time I say ever, I always think of Step Brothers, like, even if there's a fire, I'm not going to call him dad. Well, Jason Garrett might call Jerry dad just so he keeps his job.
Yeah. My man, Eric Stoner, has a phobia that Jason Garrett's going to end up being the coach of the Jags, or something like that. Poor Jaguars. Poor Cowboys. They almost saw themselves back into a division title basically with the help of the Giants on Monday night. Maybe Washington helps them this week. They're not helping themselves. But you play Dak. And Wade Phillips may frustrate Dak in this one. You're going to play him, though. You're probably going to play Michael Gallup. I think I have Michael Gallup just a hair behind Amari Cooper. And if it's a close call between Cooper and somebody else, probably seeing Jalen Ramsey. We know that Dak's going to be patient, that he is going to use those ancillary targets like Cobb, like the tight ends. But they want to go a lot of Zeke. So, again, this is a question like that Chargers-Minnesota game. Does this turn into a shootout? I think that the Rams and Cowboys played an excellent 35-31 game a few years back. I think it was during the Jeff Fisher era. Could it be that kind of game that pushes all of the choices from this game into the yes category? It absolutely could be. It's the Rams defense, honestly, that's going to decide that, because I don't think the Cowboys defense is going to slow this one down. And yeah, it's funny to think that the Rams are surging but may miss the playoffs. The Cowboys are sinking, and well, they could win next week. They probably will go to the playoffs. That's the fairness of the NFL. It's like when it's sent a memo to the NFL, so he's like, it's time to review your fantasy league rules. It's time to review playoff seeding rules, really, based on some of the way the teams are going to be in and out of the playoffs this year.
Yeah, Vic Fangio went on like a 10-minute rant yesterday about how the NFL should be structured like this, Bloom, where you play every team in your conference once. No more divisions. There are no more divisions. And the top 6 teams go. So he was a 10-minute diatribe, and of course the media. That's
actually pretty fair.
They were fascinated, and then he said, "Okay, for that 16th game, because that's 15 games, right? You play everyone in your conference once. For the 16th game, you play like a traditional rival in the other conference."
So I'll go this way. I like the idea of, this is a great Thursday night topic, by the way, so I won't belabor it. I like the idea of continuing to have rotating through the 4. Like groups of 4 teams, 4 groups of 4 on the opposite conference. So that would leave 12 games. And you play everyone in your division for sure. And then the 3 games in your own conference that you don't play are based on, just like they do it now. Like if you were a division winner, then you miss out on 3 of the worst teams left. If you were one of the worst teams, then you play the worst teams. So that way it gives a little chance for the teams at the bottom to claw their way up and, give some obstacles to the team at the top. But I like this. I like Vic Fangio. I want to pick his brain now. I want to hear more of his thoughts about the NFL.
He's been saying that since the Panthers came into the league.
Wow.
Because he's been coaching since.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Patriots came into the league. So maybe not that long. But anyway, so let's move on from that. The NFL screwed up. Atlanta and San Francisco, because they succeed in spite of themselves quite a bit. Atlanta side, Austin Hooper's mainly the big question here for people. Julio's banged up and Julio's being Julio. It's like Julio. Like, I'm just going to throw in Julio and I hope he goes off. Whatever. It's what you have when you have Julio Jones. You're used to this, Bloom. But fantasy GMs now are like, okay, no more Calvin Ridley. I'm looking at Russell Gage. What about Austin Hooper back? And Devontae Freeman seems to have earned a little bit more trust. And then still getting lots of Tannehill or Matt Ryan questions this week, too.
Yeah, and Tannehill. I mean, let's make these simple. Ryan is facing a banged up San Francisco defense. He also doesn't have Calvin Ridley, which means you got to go Julio. Just play Julio. Watch Devontae Freeman's status. He missed Wednesday. I'm not saying to go with Brian Hill.
Was it just a rest day, you think?
It might have been. I'm just saying monitor that because Freeman might be, he's warming up, might be in flex consideration here. But the big play here is Hooper. I think without Calvin Ridley, Hooper could be, again, one of those 8 for 90 kind of games. And even though San Francisco is banged up a little bit on defense, and I think that especially helps Julio Jones, you still have the pass rush. And we know that that's something that Matt Ryan doesn't do well with. This could be a struggle game, which is another reason to like Austin Hooper in this one. And for San Francisco, even though they won that ridiculous epic game down here in New Orleans, nothing is assured to them still. And again, it goes back to tiebreakers. And if somebody has a definitive answer on this, let me know. But I think that San Francisco, if Seattle wins out, which would include a win over San Francisco, I think that Seattle, it would come down to some, tiebreaker, like the 7th or 8th tiebreaker. So San Francisco has to take care of business here, and Atlanta's had a few moments playing spoiler.
What was the Kyle Shanahan quote, Bloom, about Mostert? Like,
it gives us no choice. We have no choice.
Yeah, we want to use all the 3 guys, but we have no choice.
Yeah,
because of what Raheem Mostert is doing for this team. What does he do this week? Of course, you're looking at Emmanuel Sanders saying more of that, please. Debo Samuel as a wide receiver 3 or flex play. Sanders as a wide receiver 2 with upside. Of course, you're starting George Kittle. And what's that mean for Jimmy G? And is it a Mostert world and we're just living in it? Or will they try to introduce some other backs like they used to do?
I wouldn't overthink it. I have Mostert around somewhere running back 15 to 20. So not an automatic start, just because he's still not going to get 20 touches. But he's been making the most of what he's been doing. And San Francisco should control this game. Absolutely, you're going with Sanders and Emmanuel Sanders and Debo Samuel, which means Jimmy Garoppolo, a la Jared Goff, a preferred streamer, a preferred quarterback from the group that you haven't just been automatically starting every week, and sees who's starting for Atlanta corner. Kendall Sheffield, who can run. I don't know if he can mirror players and breaks. And Isaiah Oliver, Buffalo's, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, those guys are going to get tested. Kyle Shanahan's going to have play calls. And Kyle Shanahan, I think there was a great sequence that somebody broke down about how against the Saints last week, the 49ers had the same personnel set, the same formation, like same pre-snap motions and things like that. And 3 totally different plays came out of them. So how do you defend that? How can you even when the play works against you early in the game, it leaves like that scar. Like, okay, well, if we see that again, we're going to know. Mm-hmm. No, you're not. In fact, Kyle Shanahan, a la Bill Belichick's thinking, I know that when you see that again, you're going to expect this. So I'm going to have this dialed up. So that stuff is all working, which means you want to break ties. There's a lot of different ways to break ties. In the case of someone like Kyle Shanahan, break ties so you can get Kyle Shanahan's play calls in your offense against this Atlanta defense.
Sunday night football is the Buffalo Bills traveling to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bloom's biting his nails. Is there any Bills you're going to trust? Like seriously, like
Really,
even
yeah.
Devin Singletary, who we rave about every single week, and I love the little guy. I'm not starting Devin Singletary, and I have him in almost every league I'm in.
Yeah, I'd love to see Josh Allen overcome this tough matchup. I don't expect it though. And in fact, we see Josh Allen when he faces a tough defense go the opposite way. That's exactly what I was just talking about. This idea that against weaker defenses, some of these things work really well, but against a tough defense, almost none of it works. And that's the Steelers defense at home. Steelers in primetime games at home under Mike Tomlin been pretty good. Devin Singletary, tough matchup, he'll get the volume. Who you might like here is Cole Beasley. See, so when you think of it in your Steelers' mind, can't you just see a Cole Beasley being annoying? Just zip like a gnat, just zipping around, flying around.
Beasley over Smoke, in my opinion, in PPR leagues for sure.
Absolutely. And Smoke could be okay because if the Steelers' pass rush doesn't get home, guys get open. And John Brown's good at getting open. It could be just one play or maybe one play that Josh Allen extends. But on those plays, Josh Allen could be just as likely to throw a terrible interception because he's trying too hard to do something that's not there. Dawson Knox is a Hail Mary. That's another player that kind of scares me when I think of the Bills game plan. I think, you do have Devin Bush that I think athletically can mirror Dawson Knox, but Mark Barron, who's made a few plays lately, but the Steelers just continue to insist on playing Mark Barron out there. If he gets on Dawson Knox at the wrong time, that could be scary. And the Bills, for all the applauding and everything like that, they haven't clinched a playoff spot. And they have New England next week. Okay. So nothing is really assured for this team. I mean, they can make the playoffs even if they lose this game, but it sure would make things a lot easier if they do. Now, for the Steelers, I think they need to treat this like the playoff game. And they can still make the playoffs if they lose this game. Houston and Tennessee, lots of permutations with those two teams still playing twice and how they end up. But the Steelers should just look at this one and say, if they don't win this game, they don't deserve to go to the playoffs anyway. And that's not a slight against Buffalo. That's saying this is the line. Buffalo's measured up to that line. Mm-hmm. Can you be above it?
The litmus test, right? The Mendoza line, whatever. What is it? Did I get that right? Anyway.
Well, the Mendoza line is how bad you are. I don't even know what this would be. We need another name for how good you are line.
Okay. Well, that's what it is with the Pittsburgh Steelers getting James Conner back and Juju Smith-Schuster back this week. Again, should be Thursday morning. We're recording this, Bloom. So, what's that mean for Deontay Johnson or James Washington?
Right.
Certainly Vance McDonald in the week that you need him, not going to be available. Okay. What's that mean for Duck Hodges then? And if Connor's back and Samuels isn't, and Benny Snell goes back to the bench, there's a bunch of moving parts with the Steelers
exactly.
at home.
Exactly. He's like, we had a whiteboard and we were trying to diagram out the Steelers production this week. There's all these flow chart arrows, ands, ifs, ors, buts. So James Conner and Juju practice in full. So it sure feels like the team has said, this is the target time for them to return. We feel like they can return without restrictions. And they haven't rushed either of these guys. They haven't pushed them. So this is good. Now, it doesn't make it easy to protect this offense, though. I think James Conner's, if he continues to get these full practices, he's a low running back, too, just because he's going to get goal line carries. And Buffalo's run defense has been up and down. That they're going to use Conner to establish run. They'd rather have Conner running than Duck passing. But Duck becomes really interesting as a quarterback, too, a super flex or even a DFS Hail Mary kind of play. Because what happens if they let him throw? What happens if they let him throw with Juju out there? So Juju and Washington and Deontay Johnson, who went from the worst game of his career to the best game of his career. Now we're talking. Now we're cooking. And if you get Conner getting consistent gains, and then you're taking your shots, because what's great about Duck, did you watch Baldinger talking about Duck yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love Baldinger.
Yeah. When you just love the way that Duck trusts what he sees, he trusts the mechanics, he just lets it fly. And he has guys at the end of those throws now, especially when you add in Juju. And if Tre'Davious White cancels out Juju, that's a fine trade for the Steelers because of Deontay Johnson and what he can do in the open field, and James Washington and what he can do at the catch point. So it's kind of exciting. Then again, I look at this game, Cease, and I see 16-13. I see a field position game. I see two coaches that will be content to see, who forces the turnover or who gets the big special teams play, or otherwise it comes down to one of those things. And these coaches might want to play it close to the vest, but it will be exciting to watch the Steelers and the Bills in prime time.
The chat room is reacting to us. By the way, Isley wants to know your favorite Fish album, Bloom.
Oh, Hunta. I think it's actually after the name, the original. It's fantastic. Oh, the Rift. I'll say Rift because Rift is like the dream. All the dreams about the relationship, and all we sometimes sabotage ourselves.
That's a Thursday night conversation
It is.
if I ever
It
heard one.
absolutely is. Yeah.
Indianapolis and New Orleans. How about a Thursday morning conversation? And the Colts against the Saints on Monday Night Football. And the Saints at home licking their wounds, Bloom. Still capable of playing tough defensive football, especially against a Colts team that doesn't have T.Y. Hilton. God bless T.Y. Hilton for like trying, right? I'm going to try and like, okay, Marlon Mack's out there. Cool. Jack Doyle could put in a nice top 10 fantasy tight end performance this week. That's awesome. Fantasy GMs are looking at Zach Pascal, Marcus Anderson. Like, okay. Against the Saints, could be Saints offense that forces the Colts' hand to do something they don't want to do, which is go through the air more.
Right. So do you see Jacoby Brissett in a not really a shootout, because I don't know if he can keep up his side of the bargain, but having to open up this offense more. Saints did lose Marcus Davenport and Sheldon Rankins, so they're going to at least try to establish Marlon Mack. I'm still not very optimistic about Mack this week. Zach Pascal, is going to get a lot of targets. He's got a high floor in PPR leagues, maybe even a high ceiling the way he's been playing if he doesn't draw Marshawn Lattimore a lot. But then who is it? Marcus Johnson and the speed. It's still Trey Hendrickson to get in there for Marcus Davenport. He's a good pass rusher. You've got Jack Doyle, who's a safe play here. Nyheim Hines, a deep what the heck flex. And I do think that if there's something to exploit here, maybe it's Nyheim Hines as a receiver. I just haven't seen the will by Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni to use him as a cornerstone of the game plan. This might be a time to do it in their last stand. And again, Cecil, I'll agree with you about T.Y. Hilton. The dude's his heart on his sleeve. Like, he's not ever going to quit on his team. And if anything, that desire might have hurt him because he's never the guy you should trust to know when he's ready to start to come back. And that's why I think he had these setbacks, because he just wanted to get out there as soon as he could. And, if we had an all grit your teeth and play through it team, T.Y. Hilton's been on that team. It just happens that this year he had an injury that he couldn't play through.
It reminds me of one of the drops that I have of you, Bloom, because I have so much audio of us saying all sorts of things over the years. But
you can really do a deep fake of me saying anything you want me to say.
One time you said, my brain is sometimes my enemy and sometimes my friend.
But the mind is a terrible master and a wonderful servant.
Yeah, it's like T.Y. Hilton. It's like, dude, you're your own worst enemy, man. Like, shut it down. I know you don't want to, but shut it down. Boom. Saints side, we're going to talk about that. Alvin Kamara of fantasy GMs are like, please, something more, please. From Kamara, of course, you're starting Michael Thomas. He's amazing. What's the health status of Jared Cook, Bloom? Top of my head.
Yeah.
We'll wait for Saturday's report. Right. Play on Monday night, but watch out. Just take a peek. Have another option at the ready if you need to, if you're counting on Jared Cook. And, well, we know the normal names with the Saints should do their thing. Will they do as much as they did last week? Because, quite frankly, Bloom, they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, exactly. But Breeze is rolling, and outside of those automatic plays like Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson, probably Patrick Mahomes, Breeze is right up there. You're still going to play Alvin Kamara. Although if you're in a 0.5 PPR, non-PPR league, and you're thinking of benching Kamara, I don't think you're crazy. It just hasn't been the same since he's come back from his injury. Latavius Murray looks better. Now you're doing some skate to where the puck's going to be, rational coaching kind of stuff if you say play Murray over Kamara. But if the coaches are seeing what we're seeing, Murray should touch the ball more often, and he should certainly be the goal line back. So I'm not going to talk you out of playing Latavius Murray if you expect the Saints to control this game and the Colts, it's sometimes the little team that could, as we get to this point, like just you huffing, you puffing, the house doesn't blow down, it falls in on you. So we also got Michael Thomas breaking records. Love seeing that. And see, I was talking about this on one of their shows I did. If you just drafted Christian McCaffrey in the first round and Michael Thomas in the second round, does it even matter? Because and you add in Lamar Jackson, those are 3 fantasy MVPs this year. So Michael Thomas doesn't get mentioned, I think, as often as McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson in the fantasy MVP talk. Like you said with Cook, we're going to wait until Saturday. I think if he plays, you got to go with him, though. Breeze showing so much trust in him in the red zone. In New Orleans, got to win to preserve a bye, or at least a shot at a bye. They could get, if the Packers win out, then we're going to, I think the Packers win the tiebreaker in conference record. And next thing you know, New Orleans might be having to play on wild card weekend. So much still up for grabs. I can't remember another year. It's week 15. And I don't think we can write anything except for a few of the teams in the playoffs in pen in the playoff picture yet. That's exciting.
It should be wild and woolly in the NFL playoffs, but you want to get through your fantasy playoffs, and sometimes you just look over your lineup and you need some punch. So our ever popular What the Heck flexes, it's time for that discussion, Bloom. I don't think I brought up Nyheim Hines when I tossed you the Colts, but I'll throw him as a What the Heck flex, especially if here's Jacoby Brissett in a shootout, right? Like, I'm going to dump it off to Nyheim Hines like 10 times. Like that's what you would get. So yeah, Nyheim Hines is on that level. Duke Johnson Jr., my fascination that he would ever do more is never going to happen, but he's enough for a What the Heck flex this week in that huge contest against the Tennessee Titans. Of course, a lot of love, a lot of respect for Alexander Madison or even Latavius Murray, as we mentioned, as What the Heck flexes this week in those contests. To the wide receiver position, my What the Heck flexes this week include, well, that's where Juju is for me in this matchup. Like, not a lot of momentum there. I'll throw him in. Like Brashad Perriman. Juju's above Brashad Perriman for me, but Brashad Perriman's that What the Heck flex. Russell Gage in that What the Heck flex. Randall Cobb, as I mentioned, What the Heck's flex level. And John Ross with that speed. It only takes a play. So those are my week 15 What the Heck flexes. Bloom, you look over your lineup. You need some punch. Who are some of your guys?
And I'll second Nyheim Hines, Boston Scott as a momentum play, Patrick Laird, especially if Devontae Parker can clear concussion protocol. Latavius Murray I mentioned, DeAndre Washington I mentioned. I'm not sure that Josh Jacobs is going to play. And I can't believe I'm going to do it, Cecil. Redemption. David Montgomery. The Packers are not good at stopping the run. I know that Mitchell Trubisky's warm in this one. I actually think that Montgomery, this could be a good week for him. I think this could be a game, especially if it goes on a low-scoring game, and Green Bay seems to want to play low-scoring games. For David Montgomery, wide receiver Terry McLaurin against that Philly secondary. D.D. Westbrook. I don't think DJ Chark's going to play. Allen Hurns, or will it be Allen Hurns? Allen Hurns, Cease, it wouldn't be an Allen Hurns week if he wasn't on the injury report with more than one injury. So Allen Hurns, ankle, knee. Isaiah Ford, Matt Waldman, favorite. Even if Devontae Parker's back. Kiki Cutie. Will Fuller status still up in the air. Bill O'Brien, if you're listening. If Houston can beat Tampa Bay next week, then the week 17 game against Tennessee in Houston can be the game for the division. Why not save Will Fuller? If you're not sure, keep him for week 17. Let him have one more week. That could mean a Kiki Cutie week. Danny Amendola. Because it's Tampa, right? And they're going to, I hope there's rational coaching by Todd Bowles and you just double cover. You just bracket Kenny Golladay without Marvin Jones out there. That's simple. You could see Danny Amendola gobble up those catches in PPR leagues. Similarly, Greg Ward. Here's one, Cease. When there's only one healthy receiver with NFL experience on a team, maybe you should play that receiver. I know Nelson Aguilar could play. JJ Arthega, Whiteside. Greg Ward's interesting, and I'll second John Ross because maybe he could be the shot that blows up the Death Star this week.
All right. You are trying to get through in your fantasy playoffs, and we want to see you next week right here on our YouTube channel. Thank you for listening on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify as well. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, all the hoops that YouTube makes us jump through, and hopefully we can make it through the December purge, Bloom, that everybody's all worried about.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Hey, help us.
I didn't even know I needed to worry about that. Uh-oh.
I'm always at least a little scared. He's Sigmund Bloom. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks much. Stay tuned. And as always, you'd better stay frosty.